99.9% of all species have gone extinct. Humans too will eventually go extinct. In 1962, October, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, humans came perilously close to nuclear self-destruction. At that time, John F. Kennedy was the President of the United States and Robert McNamara was the Secretary of Defense. Now, here's a warning that Robert McNamara gave in that award-winning documentary called The Fog of War. The major lesson of the Cuban Missile Crisis is this: the indefinite combination of human fallibility and nuclear weapons will destroy nations. The indefinite combination of human fallibility and nuclear weapons will destroy nations. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to speak about three topics. Topic 1, ancient teachings and ancient prophecy and 4 great lives associated with these teachings. Topic 2, my recent engagement with these ancient teachings. And topic number 3, we'll revisit the McNamara warning. And then, as a very reason for this talk, the reason why I have created this talk, I will speculate, I will suggest that we can avert disasters like nuclear annihilation and others by disseminating these ancient teachings to every corner of the globe. Now, let's start with agenda item number 1, topic number 1, ancient teachings and ancient prophecy and 4 great lives. Our first great life is Sidhartha Gautama, the Buddha. 2,500 years ago, a prince was born on the Indian subcontinent into a world full of privilege and power. He grew up to be a very fine young man who became gravely concerned with the pain and the suffering he saw all around him. He wanted to find an answer to this question: how to eradicate suffering. He had stumbled onto a hard problem, and he became formidably determined to find an answer. So this young man, he leaves security and family. He leaves privilege and a palace. He leaves power and a kingdom behind. And for 6 arduous years, he spends his time singularly focused on trying to find an answer to this question: how to eradicate suffering. He eventually found an answer to his question. After 6 years of hard work, at the age of 35, studying himself very deeply inside like a scientist, he discovered that the root cause of suffering is our mental habits, something our deeply embodied systems and memories, which lead to craving and aversion. And craving escalates to clinging, to covetousness. Aversion escalates to hatred, to animosity. And this, he discovered, was the root cause of our suffering. Now, the flip side of this coin is that at its root cause, human suffering is not caused by divine interventions. It is not caused by social injustice. It is not caused by ill fortune. He put together a set of teachings and trainings. The teachings are known as the Dhamma. The training is known as Vipassana Meditation. And these, with a lot of hard work, can help individuals to come out of their own suffering. These teachings were very successful and very popular. And over his own lifetime, these teachings spread far and wide across northern India. Today, we know him as Sidhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Buddha means someone who is enlightened or who has awakened. So that's great life number 1. Now on to great life number 2. Emperor Ashoka the Great. About 300 to 500 years after the Buddha's time, we meet this tyrannical emperor who is notorious for extreme fierceness and wanton cruelty. He stumbles across the Buddha's teaching and he gets transformed into a model ruler. He says, this is the life I want for myself, for my children. This is the life I want for all my subjects in my empire. And he makes it a central theme, a guiding policy, governance standard to spread these teachings far and wide. and he has immense success. The teachings are very effective and they spread all over India. And then they spread beyond India to neighboring countries and even beyond. And that is great life number 2, Emperor Ashoka the Great. Now let's visit that ancient prophecy. During Emperor Ashoka's reign, teachers were sent to many neighboring countries, and 2 teachers were sent to a neighboring country called Burma, which back then was called Swarna Bhumi, the land of gold. And as they left, they were given a prophecy. They were told, this land that you're going to is a very special place. There, the teachings will be preserved in pristine purity. Now, in all other places, in the decades and centuries to come, these precious teachings, these priceless teachings, they might get altered or corrupted or even lost, but not in the land of gold. There, they will be preserved and taught in pristine purity. And the prophecy continued. 2,500 years after the Buddha's time, these priceless teachings will return from that land of gold, Burma, to the land of their birth, India. Then they will spread across India, move abroad, and spread across the globe. Now that was the ancient prophecy. History is replete with stories and prophecies. This was just another one. Now let's move on to great life number 3, Sayagyi Khin. In the early part of the last century, a young Burmese man, a government servant with a very brilliant mind and high character, he learned these teachings, which in Burma had been preserved in pristine purity for 100 generations. And with this combination of his brilliant mind, his high character, and these teachings, he rose rapidly in the government and went on to head multiple central government departments, reporting directly to the Prime Minister. Now, by any measure, this is an awesome success, but for him, it wasn't his real work, it was his job. His true calling, his passion, what he wanted to do with his life was to teach Vipassana meditation and to spread it. He believed that ancient prophecy ardently, and 2,500 years had passed by the middle of the last century. And he declared, the clock of Vipassana has struck. Today, we know him as Sayagyi Khin. Sayagyi means a respected teacher, and that is great life number 3. Let's recap. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha creates teachings that can eradicate suffering. 500 years later, Emperor Ashoka spreads them across India and into neighboring countries. 2,500 years after Buddha, a leader in government in Burma who believes in ancient prophecy is determined that these teachings should return to the land of their birth, from where they will spread around the globe. Now, let's move on to great life number 4, S.N. Goenka. In Burma, a young man, Burmese man, but of Indian origin, with a brilliant mind and an aptitude for business and leadership, finds great success as a young man. In his early 20s, he becomes a leader in many multiple organizations, civic organizations, charitable organizations, all the while running his own industries. And he went on to say that all of this success at a young age kind of went to his head, and it made him occasionally prideful and angry and arrogant. Now, in 1955, he learned the teachings from Sayagyi Khin, and he said that he felt reborn. He routinely referred to his teacher, Sayagyi Khin, as my Dhamma father. After 14 years of practicing Vipassana meditation, in 1969, some combination of circumstance and perhaps destiny had him returning to India. His teacher called him and communicated this and said, I now entrust you with a very great responsibility. Take these priceless teachings, return them back to the land of their birth, spread them there, and then spread them across the world. And astonishingly, that is what happened. Driven by a sense of duty, of devotion, of strong determination, S.N. Goenka proves to be a model man, an excellent executive, a visionary leader, and above all, a truly great teacher. From 1969 to 1979, the teaching spread all over India. 1979, they went abroad, and now they have spread to every corner of the globe. That ancient prophecy had come true. Today, we know him as Acharya, S.N. Goenka. Acharya means an expert instructor or a very great teacher. And that is great life number 4, Acharya S.N. Goenka. Another quick recap. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha creates teachings that can eradicate suffering. 500 years after that, an Emperor Ashoka spreads them across India and into neighboring countries. 2,500 years after the Buddha's time, a very distinguished leader in Burmese government, Sayagyi Khin, believes in ancient prophecy and is determined that these teachings must return to the land of their birth, and he instructs his disciple, Acharya S.N. Goenka, to do this, and astonishingly, he does. Now, let's move on to topic number 2, my recent engagement with these ancient teachings. About 3 years ago, at the age of 58, I took my first 10-day Vipassana meditation course in Kaufman, Texas, here in rural Texas. You can imagine how much the teachings had spread. So why did I join? I wasn't suffering or looking for relief, and few would ever judge me to be spiritual or a seeker or deeply religious. If anything, because of my engineering background, I'm borderline neurotically rational. So why did I take a 10-day Vipassana meditation course? I joined to learn a technique, And based on my research, I was convinced it could help me with 2 or 3 things that I always wanted to improve. 1 is more self-discipline. 2 is to have better, sharper concentration. And most of all, 3, I've always wanted to have a preternaturally calm mind, an unflappable mind, something I've wanted and expected for myself. And I was convinced that this technique would help me to get there. That is why I joined, to learn a technique. I must say, I have never encountered anything similar, completely free of dogmas, no blind beliefs, no rites, no rituals. The entire course is conducted with audio tapes and videotapes of Acharya S.N. Goenka. It's wonderful because the training is consistent throughout the world. And the training is divided into 2 phases. The first phase, approximately 1/3 of the course, 3.5 days, students are systematically instructed to bring all their attention to their natural breath in the nostrils region. This is not a breathing exercise, it's an awareness and a concentration exercise. And you quickly find that your mind is wildly wandering, or at least that's what I did. But after 3.5 days, the mind calms down and it becomes much sharper. And then we go to phase 2 of the training, where the students are instructed to scan their body with that sharpened concentration systematically, and to try to pick up sensations or to become aware of sensations that they've never been aware of before, and not to react to sensations. The essence of this training is to have continuous awareness of physical sensations without reacting. Now, 4 thoughts most frequently crossed my mind in that first 10-day course. Thought number 1, oh, this is hard work. This is really hard work from 4:30 every morning to 9:30 at night. Second thought, superb instructions, superb instructor, excellent organization and structure of the course, and wonderful facilities. I kept on thinking this. Thought number 3, everything is taken care of for me. I have been given every chance to succeed. If I don't succeed, if I don't prevail, it's my fault, my failing, my responsibility. I kept having this thought. And the fourth thought, especially after a few days, my God, 10 days is very short. Time is flying. 10 days is too short. Make full use of this opportunity. Make use of every minute. I'd never know whether I will get another chance to attend a course like this. These were the 4 thoughts that most dominated my mind. I found myself wishing that I had done this course when I was in my 20s. Some of my most indelible and fondest memories from that first course are the voice and the words of the teacher. Always persuasive, precise, powerful. He would repeatedly say, work with an alert mind, an attentive mind, a vigilant mind. Hard work is required. If you want to get the results, you have to work very hard. Work with a calm mind, a quiet mind, a tranquil mind. You are bound to succeed. When difficulties arise, when discomforts arise, smilingly accept them, observe them objectively, and then start again, start working again, start again, start again. Work patiently, persistently, continuously, work with strong determination. You are bound to succeed. You are bound to succeed. After completing that first 10-day course, I began to learn and to read a lot more about the Buddha, his life, his teachings, his work. And I also read books by distinguished and contemporary scientists. And it began dawning on me that apart from being one of history's great lives, a great thinker, a great saint, a great teacher, the Buddha was also a great scientist trying to solve a problem of suffering. I began to see him as a super scientist, as a master detective looking for clues for that culprit called suffering, or as a master diagnostician trying to understand where suffering comes from and how to eliminate it. So what is it that this super scientist did? As I understand it, it comes in 4 steps. It's sometimes called the 4 noble truths, but it's 4 steps. Step number 1, he identified an ailment, an affliction that's called suffering or unsatisfactoriness or dissatisfaction, which afflicts all beings. And in the second step, he diagnosed, he identified the root cause, craving, aversion. These are mental habits. These are deeply embodied systems and memories. Craving and aversion, which then escalate. Craving escalates to clinging, to covetousness. Aversions escalate to hatred, to animosity. And herein lies the root of our suffering. So step 3, after having identified it, he says, you can be free of suffering if you can free yourself from craving and aversion. Freedom from craving and aversion. Liberate yourself from covetousness, from clinging. Eradicate all animosity and hatred, and you will be free of suffering. That was step 3, identifying the cure. And the 4th step is a prescription, a path, a roadmap. It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. If you follow this path, you will systematically be able to eradicate cravings and aversion and eliminate suffering. As I understand it, this is the totality of the Buddha's work. His whole focus was on investigate suffering, eradicate suffering, 4 noble truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. As I continued my practice of Vipassana, and I continued reading and trying to learn, I came across 2 insights. And indeed, it is these 2 insights that are the very reason that I decided to make this video. It dawned on me that I have stumbled onto something that is potentially very useful. And at least I must write about it or speak about it or somehow put it out there that it might influence others, because I see a potential to address the warning that was given in the beginning of this talk by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. What are these 2 insights? Insight number 1 is from 2,500 years ago, directly from the Buddha's teachings, and it totally transformed my pursuit of happiness. And I believe it can do the same for every single person. Insight number 1. The highest welfare is a mind that is unshaken by life's vicissitudes. The highest welfare is a mind that is unshaken by life's vicissitudes. Vicissitudes are ups and downs, and they visit everyone. And the Buddha, back then, 2,500 years ago, identified 8 common vicissitudes that visit all of us. They are pleasure and pain, praise and criticism, fame, ill repute, profit and loss. These vicissitudes visit all of us. And those of us who can manage it, handle it with a balanced mind, with a preternaturally calm mind, with an unflappable mind, those of us who can do that are rewarded with the highest welfare. Insight number 1. The highest welfare is a mind that is unshaken by life's vicissitudes. What is insight number 2? It's a single line from a speech by Acharya S.N. Goenka. It was given in 2000, August 2000, at the United Nations at the World Millennium Peace Conference. If there is no peace, in the mind of the individual, I can't understand how there can be real peace in the human world.
To me, to think of peace in the human society, we cannot ignore individuals. If there is no peace in the mind of the individual, I can't understand how can there be real peace in the human world.
And when I heard that, I couldn't help but thinking, how come I never thought of it before? I can have everything in the world, but if there's no peace in my mind, there's no peace in my home, there's no peace in my circle, there's no peace in life. What this means is that for global peace and harmony, inner peace within individuals is a prerequisite. Once again, inside two, one statement and a conclusion.
If there is no peace in the mind of the individual, I can't understand how can there be real peace in the human world.
And the conclusion is that inner peace within individuals is a prerequisite for global peace and harmony. The more and more I reflected on these two insights, the more convinced I became that I had inadvertently stumbled onto an approach, a pragmatic and implementable, a universal approach that can lead or could lead, has the potential to lead to global peace and harmony for centuries, even millennia. Let's just say for 2,500 years, a conveniently available number. Now we move on to the final topic, topic 3. We return to Robert McNamara's warning, and then I will speculate and I will suggest that we can avert disaster if we disseminate these ancient teachings across the globe. Let us revisit Robert McNamara's warning, but this time, let us hear him saying it in his own words. Here's a 30-second clip from that outstanding documentary, The Fog of War. I can't recommend it highly enough. Do watch it. Here is Robert McNamara.
And this is very important. At the end, we lucked out. It was luck that prevented nuclear war. We came that close to nuclear war at the end. The major lesson of the Cuban Missile Crisis is this: the indefinite combination of human fallibility and nuclear weapons will destroy nations.
What leads to human fallibility? I believe it's some combination of when we are afraid or angry or full of hatred, animosity, envy, contempt, disgust. In the Vipassana meditation language, these are often thought of as defilements of the mind or mental impurities, which can be eliminated with Vipassana technique. So I believe that the root cause of fallibility is suffering. Somewhere we have cravings and aversions which lead to hatreds and angers, but it all comes down from suffering, from unsatisfactoriness, from dissatisfaction. That is the root cause of our fallibility. And I am aware that we have a technique that can eliminate the root cause and thereby limit our fallibility. We would do well to think about Robert McNamara's warning in more modern, in more general terms. Perhaps along these lines: the indefinite coexistence of human suffering and modern weapons will destroy humans. The indefinite coexistence of human suffering and modern weapons will destroy humans. Now, to flesh this out, to explain a little bit more, imagine 7 billion of us around here, and so many of us have got so much suffering, and we have so much more access than ever before to more modern, to more horrendous, to more devastating weapons. How long before our fallibilities and our suffering activate these very worst weapons? How long? It's worth thinking about this. The indefinite coexistence of human suffering and modern weapons will destroy humans. So we as a species would do very well indeed to take a fresh, long, hard look, and indeed a very scientific look at this question: how to eradicate suffering. And the minute I hear that question, I think I am aware of ancient teachings which offer a prescription, which offer teachings, which offer a technique that can eliminate suffering. The teachings are called the Dhamma, the universal law. The technique is called Vipassana Meditation. The pathway, the prescription is called the Noble Eightfold Path. Now let's remind ourselves, 99.9% of all species have gone extinct. We humans too will eventually go extinct. And on that cheery note, let us at least resolve not to self-destruct and investigate what we must do not to self-destruct. Let's imagine that we are all facing a fork in the road. Now, if we go down the first path, which by default we are traveling down, here there is that indefinite coexistence of our suffering, our dissatisfaction, our unsatisfactoriness, which when combined with ever more available, ever more powerful, ever more horrendous weapons of immense destruction, I don't see how we will even survive till the end of this century, maximum 200 years. There is no way I can foresee that we will make it on this path for say 2,500 years. But if we choose a second path, and this path, part 2, is characterized by training centers like the one I went to in rural Texas, abundantly available. These kind of training centers, call them peace of mind training centers, call them suffering eradication training centers, call them Noble Eightfold Path training centers, it doesn't matter. If this kind of training is abundantly available and accessible, the way schools are today, the way medical facilities are today, the way sports fields are today, then I believe we may very well have initiated that era of global peace and harmony that could certainly last for 2,500 years. Now, here's an observation. Over the last 50 years, these very same ancient teachings have already spread to every corner of the world, albeit in small pockets. And not just by my Vipassana meditation teacher, Acharya S.N. Goenka. There have been many pioneers. For example, the Nobel Peace Prize winning Dalai Lama, the Japanese Zen scholar, D.T. Suzuki, the Vietnamese activist, monk, poet, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Indian and British philosopher, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and many, many more. It's already spread over 50 years. I can visualize, dare I say prophesize, that we can initiate this era of global peace and harmony, say for 2,500 years, if over the next 50 years, we successfully establish these kind of training centers, suffering eradication training centers in every city, every town, every village, and they have to be as ubiquitous and accessible as schools, medical facilities, sports fields. Now, on the second path, if we were to ask a traveler, what do you want? If I could grant you 2 wishes, what would you ask for? Almost certainly a default answer would be, what I really want is a mind that is unshaken by life's vicissitudes. And I also want global peace and harmony. And it is very hard for me to imagine that there is anyone, anywhere, who also does not want this right now. A mind that does not get shaken by life's vicissitudes and global peace and harmony. And I believe if we take the second path, we may very well be the people who initiated this era, let's say 2,500 years of global peace and harmony. After the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, both the adversarial combatant leaders, Kennedy and Khrushchev, realized that they had gone to a place where no humans had ever gone before. They had looked into an abyss. And remember what McNamara said, we lucked out, we came this close. They realized that we cannot proceed like this. They both said enough, and they made tremendous efforts to find a way to peace. John F. Kennedy launched his peace initiative with a speech called A Strategy of Peace. It is one of the world's great speeches. I wholeheartedly recommend that you check it out. Part of what he said in that speech is this: let us focus on a more practical and attainable peace that is based not on a sudden revolution in human nature, but on a more gradual evolution of human institutions. And I feel that this is the kind of thinking that we can adapt for our times. So let all of us focus on a more practical and attainable global peace and harmony that is not based on some sudden revolution or transformation of human nature, but rather on a more systematic, a more steady, and a global eradication of human suffering by the cultivation of inner peace within individuals. With an infinite gratitude, I dedicate this talk to two great lives, Sayagyi Khin and to my Vipassana meditation teacher, Acharya S.N. Goenka.